we go.
That's cool.
Well, hi everyone. Lisa Tamati here. Super excited. I'm jumping out of my skin. I can't sit still. I have one of my great heroes that I've followed for such a long time. So I'm a little bit, being a bit of a fangirl right now, but I'm sure I'll calm down in a minute or two. Commander Mark Devine is with us. He has such a huge history. You are known really as the warrior man, unbeatable mind, SEALFIT. You've done a heck of a lot in your life, Mark, and it's just I can't wait to share some of your insights, because what you do and what you've done is just absolutely amazing. So welcome to Pushing the Limits. Can you give us a little bit of background, Mark, on where you come from and what you've done and how you've just to give us a little bit of because obviously you've been in the SEALs, you're a commander in the SEALs, you've trained SEALs. So let's start there. Let's let you come to word.
Oh my God. Where to start? So
maybe childhood. Quick recap.
I was born at a very young age in a very small town in upstate New York, a province of the United States. No. I'll try to keep this like short, because sometimes I have a few run-on sentences that go like 40 minutes, right? And we don't want that to happen as we're running out of time.
On the childhood.
So yeah, I was a pretty normal kid growing up, running around the woods of upstate New York, crazy family, lots of alcohol and, anger. The belt would come out pretty much every other night. And my brother and I would literally just provoke my father just to do it, because we stopped taking him seriously after a while. In that regard, I feel pretty fortunate that my young spirit was like, you can't break me, and I realize now that, we all choose our parents, let's just say, from a spiritual perspective. I certainly believe that for certain experiences. And for a while I played the victim, like, woe is me. But now I look back and like, thank God, like that really forged my mental toughness and resiliency. And I had to unpack some crap from that, obviously, but it made me a Navy SEAL warrior, right? When I went through Navy SEAL training, you could not hurt me, because nothing was compared to my dad. Wow. Anyway, so that's a little aside. Upstate New York had a really, it's beautiful. I've been to your country in New Zealand. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I feel the same way about America in certain places, even though we're much bigger. But New York is one of those areas, 6 million acres of unfettered, protected land in northern New York called the Adirondack Mountains. And that was my playground. And our summer home was on the west shore of a lake called Lake Placid, where the Olympics were. You're probably familiar with that.
Yep.
And there was no road access to my house. There was no TV, no internet. Still, there's finally internet up there, but no TV. And we would have to take a boat to get there. And so I grew up with boats, and I grew up hiking in the Adirondacks, and a lot of time alone in the wilderness, which is one of the reasons I became kind of an endurance athlete. I know you're an endurance athlete, because I was comfortable being alone. I was comfortable running the trails in the mountains. And I used to have a friend. We would run up Whiteface Mountain, which is at the base or the foot of Lake Placid. And not a huge mountain, it's 4,000 feet, but it took a couple hours. If you're going to hike up there, it takes a few hours. For us to run up there, it took us 45 minutes. People used to think we were crazy. When we got to the top, we would wrap our ankles and our knees, and we would play tag on the way down. And the trails are steep and just rocks and ruts and roots. It's amazing we didn't kill ourselves. So that was my early childhood upbringing. Nature, being in the woods and in the water, were my solace away from the family dynamics. Mm-hmm. That led me to be a competitive athlete in high school, 12 varsity letters. And then into college, I was recruited for swimming, and I became a competitive rower. And then I started triathlon. So I was an athlete, but the athletics really was my escape and kind of my grounding rod, like it is for so many athletes, right? And I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I didn't really spend a lot of time in my youth thinking about my future. I kind of accepted a lot of the stories from my family that I was going to go back and be part of the family business. That business was really the place that divines go. We don't go into the military. We don't go into academia. We don't do those things. And so anyways, as your listeners are hearing this, they're probably like, yep, check. Because that's
done that. Yeah.
That's the norm, right? That's not in it. I wasn't off, but it's certainly not what I teach today, right? Because right? I think
Yeah.
if we don't follow our passion and find our calling in life, then we're going to have discomfort later on. That discomfort is going to lead to existential crisis.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate, incredibly fortunate, that when I left college, I got a job with a big consulting accounting firm called Coopers and Lybrand, which
So
became
you were an
Pricewaterhouse.
accountant. I mean, that
Oh, yeah,
makes me
I was an
laugh, really.
accountant. I know, right?
I was on the way to being an accountant too, because
Were
it was
you?
what my dad wanted, and I'm about as far from an accountant as you can get, you know.
Yeah.
And I
Well, I
laughed when
was
I
too,
heard your story. It's like, yeah.
but I stuck with it if long enough to become a certified public accountant. I had to
Wow,
pass the exam.
I didn't.
I got my. I'll tell you what. I would rather go back to Bud's Navy SEAL training than try that darn exam again. What a pain in
Yeah,
the ass.
I hear
So
you.
that told me something right there. But it was a great opportunity because here I am. I got a degree from a pretty good university called Colgate, but I didn't really have any skills. And so this job opportunity it sent me to a top business school in the United States called NYU, New York University. So I got my MBA in finance and I became a certified public accountant. And for 4 years, I got to work on a lot of different companies as a, consultant and auditor. And, so I saw a lot.
Wow.
And so that was kind of formative in a sense. Like I learned a lot. What was probably more formative or more substantial for me was, once I got into that suit and tie and I was working 8 hours a day, mind you, they allowed me to work only 8 or 10 hours a day. Most people in those scenarios work 15 to 20, but because they were sponsoring this small group of us to go to business school at night, that they had to let us off. And then we would go to school full time during the summer and just come in on Fridays. It was a really cool program. So I was working 8 to 10 hours a day, going to school at night. And I was an athlete, right? And I was like, how am I going to stay as an athlete, right? Most people don't, right?
No,
As you know,
they
in the
lose
corporate
them.
world. And
Yeah.
I was like, I've got to continue my athletic career. And so I would get up really early in the morning and go for a 6-mile run. And then at lunchtime, when all my peers would go have a beer or martini at lunch, I would go to the gym and do like this, what I now know is a high intensity, functional workout, which back then nobody talked about, because I had to go fast and I wanted to do a lot of different variety and I had to be in and out of there in 45 minutes. And then after they let me go at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and my first class wasn't until 7:30. So I'm looking at that saying, look, I got 2.5 hours. I could do some training here. So one night I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but one night I was walking down 23rd Street. I was living on 22nd in Manhattan and I heard these screams coming out of this building. And I stopped and I looked up and I was standing under the flag of the World Sado Karate headquarters. And I was like, oh, interesting. Maybe it's a martial art. And I had been intrigued with the martial arts, but in upstate New York, there just wasn't much. There was nothing, as a matter of fact, in my town. And so didn't really get a chance to study anything. So I went in there and I was floored. Like I was stunned by what I saw. It was an incredible art. This was the headquarters of a worldwide art called Sado that had 300,000 or 400,000 students. And the grandmaster, the founder, was on the center of the floor. This Japanese man, 10th degree black belt, looked like a freaking tank. And his name was Nakamura, and he became my mentor, my first real mentor.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting, Lisa, is it wasn't really the karate that changed me. It was the Zen training.
Yep.
And he is one of the few masters who kept the old ways of training the mind and the body and the spirit and understood that they all had to be in balance and they all were part of the package of developing, these karatekas, these trainees. And I loved the Zen part. And there was a Zen class we had every Thursday night for an hour. We would sit on the little wooden zazen bench. And honestly, this studio as a headquartered had well over 1,000 students. Wow. There were 10 of us in this class, most of them black belts, and I was a white belt. And I was like, where is everyone else? They didn't get it. And there wasn't a lot of understanding or talk about meditation back then. But boy, did the meditation, I had all the usual kind of resistance to it and my monkey mind going all over the place and wondering if it really worked. But I trusted Nakamura. Yeah. And the way he acted and presented himself, his character, just who he was so different than any other human I've ever seen or experienced. And I was like, there's got to be something to this, right? So I stuck with it, and it literally changed almost every aspect of who I was and how I saw the world and what I what I perceived to be my calling or my purpose in life. And it was sitting on that bench that I realized that I was going down the wrong path with this MBA, CPA, working in the corporate world. Even if I went back to the family business, it just wasn't what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
And so that it was the first time in my life that I allowed myself to examine my core story that said, this is who I am, and to recognize it was built on a lie.
Yeah. And you weren't following your true path.
I wasn't following my true path, but my true path wasn't exactly laid out for me in those meditation sessions. It was more like the archetypal energy, and the arc of my life was shown to me. And that arc was to be a warrior, and then to, then it would lead somewhere else. It wasn't quite clear to me, but the warrior part was very strong. And it didn't, I didn't get messages while I was meditating saying, you're going to be a Navy SEAL. What I got was warrior, and you're going down the wrong path with this business stuff. And it was when I finally started to accept that I learned about the Navy SEALs, right? Remember, this is 1987, 88. There was no TV shows and movies.
We weren't famous back then.
We weren't famous, right? Nobody knew them. In fact, the few people did know them were like a bunch of crazy guys. I was like, one day I was walking home from work and I came across a Navy recruiting station. I didn't even know it was that, but I saw a poster in the window. And I took a double take of this poster. And I was like, whoa. The title of the poster was Be Someone Special. And it had Navy SEALs doing really cool shit. Jumping out of airplanes. Yeah, like blocking out of little mini submarines, sneaking through the water. And it's just so cool for me. And I just sat there kind of transfixed looking at that. And it didn't say anything about the SEALs. It just said US Navy. And I was like, oh, interesting. So I went back and I talked to the recruiters. I said, who are those people on that poster? And they said, oh, they're crazy Navy SEALs. You don't want to do that. I said, yeah, I do. Tell me more. So long story short, I started that whole CPA, MBA bullshit in 1985. In November of 1989, I got my black belt. I got my MBA. I got my CPA. Wow. And I was on a bus. I was on a bus to Officer Candidate School.
Oh God! Off on the next mission.
Off on the next mission. I walked away from probably what would in today's dollars be $200,000 salary to get paid $500 a month.
Wow, that takes
as an officer candidate.
That takes courage. Wow. That alone takes courage.
But I didn't question it. I knew this is the right path. And when I got to SEAL training, we call BUDS, basic underwater demolition SEAL training, man, I felt like I was home, and there was no way they were going to get me to quit. I mean, other people said this, but I said this very clearly, that you'd have to kill me to get me out of here.
Yeah.
And I don't think they can legally do that, although they sure do try. Right?
Get pretty close.
Get pretty close. Yeah. I sailed through SEAL training. We had 185 in my class, hardcore, awesome guys. And 19 of us graduated, and I graduated number 1 in my class. And my entire team, my boat crew that we trained together from day one, graduated with me.
Wow.
So there's something about that meditation training with Nakamura and the skills and the values around team building and taking my eyes off myself and putting them on others, the taming of the ego, that really allowed me to help lead my team to success, right? We made it about the team and not about me, and everyone else is about them. And they, the teams, the instructors their job is to select the next crop of teammates that they will go to war with.
Yeah.
And so what they're looking for is not who's the toughest guy, not who's the best athlete.
That's the coolest. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Not the best looking, not right ever. It's, are you a great teammate?
Yeah.
Are you going to have my back? Right. And so that's something that I guess I demonstrated.
Wow. That's a brilliant sort of intro into your background. What fascinates me with you too is that you because the SEALs are known for being hard asses. I mean, they are hard people. They have been through tough stuff. They go through tough stuff every single day that they're in there. But you've got this meditation side. You do a heck of a lot of yoga. You talk about authenticity, and I know you don't like the word vulnerability, but you're quite you're open about the stuff,
Right.
And that's quite the opposite of most in the training that you get. I suppose this comes from Nakamura being your master, that he sort of taught you that very early on, the sort of the both sides of the coin. And I get the question quite a lot too, is like, when people read what I've done and achieved and so on, they're like, wow, you must be a super hard ass. And then they meet you and realize that you're actually very vulnerable. I cry a lot. I'm very, full of mistakes and problems and stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
That I'm working on at all times. But the difference is, I think that you embrace both sides, and that you are always in pursuit of excellence, and you're always improving and you're always developing. And I found that a really interesting combination in someone who's so physically tough and mentally tough, to have both sides. Was that a hard thing in the beginning with the SEALs?
I think you're right. I did learn that initially from Nakamura. And so every day, I was so committed. Every day I would stretch and I would do my breathing practices and my visualization while I was going through SEAL training. And every day in the SEALs, I do some version of that. It was, it's difficult for a military operator to keep a daily dedicated practice going.
Yeah.
You're up 24 hours a day and you're in combat. But honestly, when I went to Iraq in combat, I meditated and trained yoga every single day.
Wow.
And it had a profound effect on me, right? In the war zone, all my teammates are just getting frayed at the edges, and I felt strong and confident, and I knew I was going to survive because I had that vision that I was going to be home with my child, my wife and son. So it came first from Nakamura, and then I started into yoga. So my career, it's important for people to know, I was 20 years in the Navy SEAL, but about 9 years active duty and 11 years reserve. So as a reserve, so 9 years after I joined, and even while I was in active duty, I started to get into yoga. But when I got off active duty, I had more time. I went full on in. And that was because actually it was a blessing in disguise. I was living in San Diego and there was no Seido karate out here. Otherwise I would have gotten back into Seido karate. So at first I got into something called Goju karate. I got a black belt there, but it was very similar to Seido, but it lacked the spirit and it lacked the mental, the meditation. So I didn't really stick with that. And then I got into ninjutsu, thinking ninjutsu might be a little bit more spiritual. And I really liked the teacher, but he was a horrible business guy. And so right on the cusp of getting my black belt, he shut his school down and ran out of money. And then I found yoga kind of about the same time as ninjutsu, but I didn't really understand it until I read Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and also Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography Yoga. And those things just absolutely shattered my paradigm of what was possible and what yoga was. Wow. As the oldest science of mental and personal development. So I fully went into yoga, and I ended up getting 700 hours of certifications and started my own yoga program and wrote a book about it eventually, and started teaching it to SEALs. And so all this, I was still a SEAL officer, because I didn't retire from the SEALs in 2011, but I was able to do all this and build a business that started to teach Navy SEALs everything I had been learning. And that's called SEALFIT. That was the business, that everything I've been learning and applying in my own life, right? And this was this integrated model of development that started with Nakamura, where it wasn't just about the physical. It was about physical, it was about mental, it was about emotional, it was about intuitional and spiritual aspects of our being. And that I learned that if you train those together, then you will integrate, you'll become whole again. And what that means is you have access to more of yourself, after more potential. You can maintain peak performance, you can serve more profoundly, you can do more. You've got way more energy, way more enthusiasm, way more motivation, way more peace of mind, way more clarity. It's extraordinary. In a sense, it's like coming back to who we are. That's why I call it integration. In fact, the word yoga means union or integration. And so does Zen, believe it or not. Those practices and traditions are really all about becoming whole as a human again, as opposed to fragmented and separated from yourself and separated from others. So I stumbled upon this and created my own path or my own model. And then when I had started to teach it to SEALs and special operators and other military operators, and a ton of people even from New Zealand, some of your listeners might have been to my training. Then I started to recognize that, wow, this is necessary in our culture, because most Westerners have no connection to this. This way of living, of the, taking care of the internal while you are working in the external, the yin and the yang, the balance between being and doing, becoming whole again, so you can do your work from a whole perspective as opposed to a fragmented, separated self perspective, which leads to suboptimal results at a minimum,
Yep.
and it leads to flat out crisis or destruction at the maximal level. And we're seeing that both from the investment in violence, military buildup, conflict, as well as environmental degradation. It's because human beings have not learned to be whole, and they don't recognize that we're all interconnected, and every one of our thoughts, every one of our emotions, every one of our actions has an implication or an impact on the whole.
Yep. This is gold. This is really gold. Because I think, like we live our lives very much in the, in the doing, we're busy all day. We're distracted busy. With a billion things. We're running businesses. We're, got families and so on. And it's really hard to find that stillness. And I know that even as an athlete who I think for years, I was just head through the wall. Take a teaspoon.
Most people are. That's all they learn until they hit the wall, right?
Yeah, and I hit the wall. Don't worry, I hit the wall, and a couple of dozen times before, because I was a bit thick. I didn't sort of wake up that, hang on, this stuff isn't working anymore. And it works when you're 20, and it works when you're 25, and it works when you're 30. But when you start hitting your 40s and you're smashing the crap out of your body, and you're not refilling the tank, and you're not re-examining what the hell are you doing. I think that's when the wheels started to fall off for me. And I'm like, hang on a minute, why isn't my body doing like it was, what it was supposed to do? And when you've grown up though, with that expectation of you have to be tough, you have to be hard. And I grew up, like different to you, but I had a dad who was an awesome father, but he was a hard ass. And he expected you to be tough and mentally tough, physically tough. He didn't really tolerate a lot of weakness or sickness or anything like that. And he was, amazing dad, but he pushed really hard. And that sort of makes you think, well, you have to be hard all the time. And then when you break down, then that's you being weak, instead of looking at the whole picture and quietening the mind and doing these things. Like meditation was for me. Yeah, I know, I hear it's really important, but I can't sit still. Well, that's why I need it twice as much.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for that. It'd be fun to talk about, but think about, when I reflect back in my SEAL training, and all these other guys were trying to be hard, and they had the same thinking, because America has a real soft side to it, but there's a lot of freaking warriors in America. And we have that same kind of like what your dad's talking about, like got to be hard. Like there's no room for weakness. It's got to be tough. You think about the metaphor, the guys who quit were just badasses. Yeah. But why did they quit? They quit because they lacked the emotional strength to understand what was happening to them in their either most extreme moments of crisis or, moments of just doubt, right? And then they're like, so they let uncertainty and they let doubt creep in and to kind of corrupt their decision making. And then, one mistake leads to an injury. We call it quinjury. Quinjury, and you've probably seen this in endurance athletes. It's when all of a sudden the injury kind of crops up and then the person's out. And reality is that they created that injury to quit. Yeah, it may not have been
wanted a way out,
right? Because they wanted a way out, and it's very subconscious. It's not preparing. It's not preparing properly. It's not recovering properly. It's not understanding that this is this is a long game, and getting their ego out of the way, right? So
it used to prop up for me like before any big race, that in the week ahead of that race, I would get sick. And I would, I'm sure that was my subconscious trying to stop me do it.
Yeah. Giving you an out, right? And so you have to push through that and be like, no.
You've got a cold, you've got the flu.
You think about the metaphor between, like, if you got a tsunami coming, like consider tsunami a metaphor for a crisis or a big challenge, like BUD/S or a 50-mile or 100-mile race or something like that. There's a tsunami coming. Would you rather be a mighty oak facing that tsunami, or would you rather be like a reed?
A reed, definitely.
Yeah. And so when I went through SEAL training, I tried to be the reed, right? I tried to be really flexible. I didn't let anything bother me. Instructors would come up and, during Hell Week for us, which is week 7 back then, but now it's more like week 3 or 4, 7 days nonstop training around the clock, no sleep. Everyone's heard about that.
Yep.
Like a day Thursday, like the day before we're over, most of the, we're down to like 60, 35, maybe 45 or 50 actually in our class.
Yep.
From 185 already.
Wow.
And instructor Evil comes over and he's like, Mark, I don't like you. I'm going to make you quit. And in my mind, I was like, good luck. You know what I mean? And I even think I started
that confidence.
I don't know. It was just my spiritual strength saying, no, you're not going to get me to quit. Like you can't. And so I actually like was challenging him in my mind, and it must have come through on my face. And he goes, and I'm going to wipe that smirk right up your effing face. And he just made me start doing 8-count bodybuilders, which are like a burpee basically. And I remember in my mind thinking, okay, all right, let's do this, right? All I got to do is one 8-count bodybuilder at a time until he gets tired.
Until he gets tired.
Exactly. So that's what I did. I just did one 8-count bodybuilder. And then I just did it, one 8-count bodybuilder. And then I just did one 8-count bodybuilder. Wow. And when we got up to like
so you broke it down in your head.
800.
Holy heck.
Which is nothing, right? I did 24 hours of burpees a couple of years ago as part of our burpee challenge. We did, check this out. We did 22 million burpees as a tribe to raise money for veterans.
Jeez.
And part of that was to break a world record where a 6-person team, you would have loved this, 3 men and 3 women.
Amazing.
We did 36,000 burpees in 24 hours. So I did 7,500 or something like that. So 700 is nothing.
I'm going to stop
complaining. But back then I didn't know if it was going to be 700 or 7,000 or 70,000. But he got bored and he walked away at about 700. And I'm just like, okay, that worked. That's a good strategy.
Well, what about the, like the burning in the muscles and the exhaustion and the running out of glycogen?
You can do anything one at a time.
Wow.
It's just like in a race. I'm sure you get to a point where all you are saying to yourself is just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah,
one more step.
Yep, absolutely.
It's the same thing. We call them micro goals. And so we teach, I started teaching these to SEALs, and the best guys already did this, but now we teach it. And the SEALs are teaching what I call the big 4. They're teaching box breathing for controlling, their stress. They're teaching positive internal dialogue and mantras, and they're teaching visualization, to visualize every event and visualize what the end state looks like for you, and to visualize the mission and whatnot. And then micro goals, like you don't go to Buds thinking about 8 months of training. You go to Buds thinking about, what do I got to do today to win? And then when today gets hard, you just collapse that to, what do I need to do to win this evolution or event that I'm in? And then when that gets harder, it's like, what do I got to do to get to the next 5 minutes? Anytime you quit or you have the thought, well, this sucks, I think I want to quit. You just say, well, let me just push through to another, let me just push through another 5 minutes, or let me just get to that berm up there if it's a run, or, you know what I mean? Log PT could go on forever. Let me just finish this evolution, then I'll make a decision. And so you just keep kicking the can down the road of the pain and the quit decision and the suffering. And eventually this suffering goes away, because that's a temporary state.
And this is like that. You just dropped so much gold inside of 2 minutes. I want people to like take a couple of those, because these are things that took me 20 years to learn.
Play it back in slow motion.
Like that's how I break down, every massive event. Like I remember, and my listeners have heard me tell this story, but I ran 2,250 kilometers through New Zealand for charity.
Wow, good for you. Holy cow.
Yeah, and I was like, but I've been so busy in the build up doing, I've been at other races around the world, done Badwater in the States, just come back from that, just launched a book, and then I'm standing at the start line. I've been so busy in the thing that I actually hadn't thought about actually running the 250, because I was just like, I got everything, sweet. And then I was starting at the start line, and I just had a panic attack, like the first real big panic attack. And because you're staring down the barrel of this,
like, holy shit, this is 2,000 kilometers. Like, what the heck have I done?
Yeah, like what the frick was I thinking? And I went, we had the media, we had all my crew and everybody there, and I just went away behind one of the cars and got my mum, my mummy, because she's my safe place. Went to my mummy and I just bawled my eyes out and said, Mum, I can't do this. I don't know what the frick I was thinking. I can't, and there's no way out. You got, and Mum's just like, hey, she hugged me, as mums do, and she said, you don't need to do 2,250 today. All I want you to focus on is that letterbox up there, that was a couple of 100 meters up the road. That's what you got to do right now. And then we're going to get through to lunchtime, and then you're going to have lunch. And then we're going to get through to this and that, and and she just broke it down into pieces, and she took all of that load that I was just like, oh my God, this is huge, and she broke it into one step at a time, basically. And that was some of the greatest learnings that I've taken away for every event that I've done. And there have been times when I've broken and I've just crashed on the ground, and like I don't know how to get up, and people have come along and they've got me up and they've walked me through the next few steps, or the next, and that has gotten you over that hump,
Right.
And I just that's so much gold right there, what you've just said, that I think if we can do that in daily life, so when we're faced with some big scary thing coming at us, how do I just get through this moment? And we're very if you can get through these impulses, like the 30 seconds, get through the 30 seconds almost. Sometimes you can get to a place where you can cope again, and then you can sort of get back up.
And this goes back to like the internal dialogue. Most people don't examine their internal dialogue. And this is where meditation is so critical. And you can also consider like running or swimming or biking, endurance sports generally are also very good for examining internal dialogue, because you're going to meet resistance. And now how you talk to yourself has an incredible impact on your energy and your motivation. Literally, we use the terminology, feeding the courage wolf versus feeding the fear wolf. Feeding fear is allowing negative dialogue and negative imagery and negative emotions to kind of rule the roost, right? Of your psychology, and that weakens you. Like negative thoughts demonstrably weaken you as a human being. They're going to not just weaken your motivation, but literally musculature wise, you get weaker. And that's been proven through kinesiology. So positive thoughts create a higher vibration, which bring more energy, more access to more creativity and motivation. And so you got to train positive thoughts. That's what I mean by feeding the courage wolf. And the more you feed the courage wolf by training positive mantras and positive thoughts, then the more you starve the fear wolf until he goes away, until he just doesn't have the food anymore. And those patterns dry up and blow away. So I created a bunch of positive mantras that I would say in SEAL training. And they're still with me today. Like as soon as I start a hard workout, they kick back in. Feeling good, I'm looking good, I ought to be in Hollywood. I'm feeling good, I'm looking good, I ought to be in Hollywood. I'm feeling good, I'm looking good, I ought to be in Hollywood. I've got this easy day piece of cake, hoo-yah hey. I've got this easy day piece of cake, hoo-yah hey. And then I'll synchronize that with my breathing. So hardcore run, 3 steps in, inhale, 1, 2, 3. I've got this easy day piece of cake. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, right?
Wow. And the rhythm is good too, right?
Exactly. And so I was synchronizing those before the big 4. The first skill I said box breathing, but it's really breath control. So running, swim, anything you're doing, always breathing through your nose as best as possible and controlling the breathing and creating a nice rhythmic pattern with the breathing. It's going to be different depending upon what you're doing. If you're lifting weights, it's going to be one thing. If you're running, another. Swimming, another. Swimming creates its own little breathing patterns because of the, head in the water versus out of the water. And but just starting there, controlling your breathing and adding a positive mantra or positive internal statement that's linked to the breath is transformative. Like not only does it keep you in the game athletically or whatever, but when you do this during your regular day in and day out, you're training your mind to be really positive and to really be very concentrated. So you're developing concentration power. So you're turning your mind from like a scattered floodlight, which is flickering on and off, the monkey mind, to like a very, very concentrated laser beam that you can point that laser beam on anything, any task, any project, and it deeply improve your productivity, the ability to get things done, significantly.
Wow.
And then the imagery, right? Well, let me back up. The other thing that process of paying attention to the quality of your thoughts and changing them to positive thoughts, and increasing your concentration power as you start to look at the dialogue too in your head, like what is actually going on, and you recognize that typically what's going on in your head is a series of statements that are also based upon belief systems, but it can be framed as questions, right? And so when people say, "I don't think I can do this,"
Mm.
What they're really saying is, am I worthy? Am I competent? Right?
Yep.
And so we can begin to recognize that our belief systems are based upon questions and statements that may or may not be true. And so you want to take a look at the ones that are questionable, especially if they have a negative quality, and say, is that true? And the reality is not true. I am worthy. I am competent. Now, I may not feel that yet, but the more I tell myself that, and the more I can see that in myself, and the more that I meditate and actually feel into my worthiness and my competence, and the more I work to eradicate the emotional side or shadow that may have be tied or related to that. For me, it was because of the childhood abuse, I kind of felt a little unworthiness and whatnot. Even though I was capable as a SEAL, it still kind of plagued me for a while until I had to stare down that wolf of fear and be like, yeah, that's all bullshit. That's just a story that I'm holding on to. And I was able to release all that energy and feel that worthiness. Now, then that leads to a whole nother set of questions, which are extraordinarily empowering, right? So when understanding your capability as a human being, the potential that you have, the power that we have, you can then project that into the future and say, what does victory look like for me, right? If I'm going to run this 2,000 meter or 2,000 kilometer race, and I'm going to raise money for charity, what is that for? What's my why? And what does victory look like?
Yep.
And so you get a clear sense of what victory looks like. And then you can even do that with the micro parts. Like, so you chunked it down into 100-kilometer segments, let's just say. What does victory look like for that segment, right? For the next 5 days. And then what does it look like for today? And what does it look like? And this is in a sense what your mom was doing, but she was doing it from the other way around. What does it look like for the next 6 hours? And what does it look like for the next 3 hours? And then you get a clear picture because you're asking the right questions and you're winning in your mind before you step foot onto the battlefield. So asking really powerful questions like, what does victory look like? Who is on my team? Who's got my back? Right? Why am I doing this? How does it relate to my purpose in my life? Right? These are the questions that we start asking, because now we've drowned out the negative incessant chatter, which is just holding us back and distracting us. Yeah. And we've created this space and kind of I use the metaphor of still water pond, right? We've taken our mind and we've created it, instead of this choppy, bouncing all over the place, turbulent thought stream, largely negative. We've calmed it down, and it's now the still water. And on that still water, you can look in it, you see your reflection clearly. Yep. So that's kind of a nice thing. You get to see your true self more clearly, but also what you drop into that water in terms of the thought is going to ripple out and affect everything. So you end up dropping thought seeds that are really powerful instead of chaotic and negative.
Wow. Because there's this whole, there's automatic negative thoughts. And if we think about how we evolved, that was there for our survivals, because we needed to be aware of dangers and things in our environment. So we were always looking for the bad thing that was going to come at us. But in our world now, where we're just, we have this constant chatter in our head, and it's, I've certainly dealt with this for a long time, and I fought against the whole sitting still thing, and focusing inwards, because it's very unpleasant, when you're having, when you want to move, you just want to move. Give me a hard ass workout any day over meditation, sure. Because it's just like, this energy, this agitation, but that's why I need to do it, so that I can break through that piece of the puzzle. And then you can tap into strengths that you didn't know you had, and quietness. And then you start to really reflect. And like for me, has only really been, even in the last few months, where I've been, my dad passed away, and it was one hell of a battle for his life. And it was a real, I was fighting against the system, and it was a massive battle. And it's all good when you win, but it's not so good when you don't win. And so this one just, was a bit of an existential crisis after that, because I'd lost this battle for my dad, who I loved dearly. And it made me go inward. It made me start to really question some of the bigger things, because you start realizing that life's shorter than you think it's going to be. Right. You're not, you want to understand and then going inside and doing some deep work and doing some trauma work and doing all that sort of hard stuff has been great, and there's always good that comes out of shit. Not
Always.
that I, you never ever want to go through things like that, but when you do, you can always turn them into something, a learning curve of some sort. And having that, I was listening to you with Bedros Keuilian, who's awesome. I love him. He's another one that I
He's an
follow.
awesome guy.
Yeah, he's a rock star. And you were talking about how you went through the Zen process where you were, for a start, you started meditating, but you're just learning to quieten the mind. And then after a few months, that became then mindfulness, where you're starting to observe yourself from outside and splitting the mind, or somehow you put this, and you're actually observing yourself as this higher self, if you like. Can you explain that a little bit, and how does that work?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wanted to talk about that. Because you're right, meditation is hard, especially for active people, which everybody listening, everybody in the Western world is pretty much hyperactive.
Yep.
That's what we're taught is reality. Like go, 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 do. We get overcommitted. Now we have, constant distraction with our iPhones and social media, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Wait until we get plugged in with a Neuralink, wow.
God.
So we got to push back against that. The only way to push back against that is to disconnect from all that and to sit still or stand still or take a walk, right? But don't do anything, right? Don't do it for a goal. Don't do it to check it off the box. Don't do it to be the best meditator,
Check that box.
It doesn't work, right? That's
what I was guilty of too.
Right? There's no goals here, right? It's about becoming still, getting that clarity and that still water mind back. If you ever had it, like we had it when we were kids, of course, but in a different sense, so that you can evolve. Let me start there. I think that there's two reasons we're on this planet. One is to evolve, to become the highest and best version of ourselves in this lifetime. And the second is to align with our calling or our purpose. And those two then really kind of go hand in hand, or hand in glove. You can't evolve if you're constantly doing. You actually will stay stuck. You'll keep getting your ass handed to you. You'll keep suffering. You'll keep feeling victimized, and you'll keep looking outward for the solutions, and you'll keep blaming other people or society or taxes or the government or God.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I did
in that order, probably, right? The answers lie within, right? And so the only way to go inward is to slow down and to be quiet, right? So it's imperative. Now, why do most people fail? A, because everything I've just talked about, they haven't been taught this, but B, because their body, mind, their body, brain is very, very agitated. It's amped up because you've been taking all this stress on throughout your life. So what I teach is that the first step in meditation practice isn't mindfulness. It isn't a mantra practice. It's just to box breathe, which is a pattern breath. 5 count in, 5 count hold, 5 count out, 5 count hold, or 4 or 3 if you have trouble with that. And just let that nostril breathing and that massaging the vagus nerve stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, and it's bleeding off stress and bringing your body brain back into balance. When your body brain is back into balance, your brain is going to experience that as a lower frequency rate. Lower frequency means fewer thoughts, right? If you're in gamma, it's like popcorn brain. But if you're in alpha, right? In alpha, like you're listening to beautiful music, classical music, or you're maybe doing some journaling, your mind stops racing and it starts to get into a groove.
That lovely alpha state of focus.
And so the box breathing practice trains your mind to get back into alpha, trains your body to de-stress. And you do this, it might take you months, usually about 3 months. My clients have like this extraordinary calming that comes over them, and they're already changed. But this is, just the preparatory work, right? This also, for those who are working on their physical structure and their health and their weight, this also has enormous benefits because you begin to feel a lot better, and you begin, you're starting to breathe in that life force again, and you're getting more oxygen in with every breath, and you're retraining the breathing patterns. So this becomes your more natural state. If you, let me just pause here. If you train for 20 minutes a day of a 5 count box breath, that's 3 breaths per minute. Over time, it might take a year or more, you're going to eventually settle into a natural breath pattern of 6 breaths per minute, which is now proven to be optimal.
Exactly.
When I've been doing this for years, I never knew that. It just kind of settled out there to where 6 breaths per minute through the nose was standard for me, or is standard, and that's what will happen to you.
Yep.
But those are full breaths, full exhales, getting all the toxins out, the health
Especially the
benefits.
exhale. Yeah.
Yeah, especially the
is
exhale.
everything.
It's enormously beneficial for your body, and everything starts to come back into balance. You start losing weight, you start eating better because you want to eat better, you start sleeping better because you got all that less cortisol and less stress. Wow, all of that is foundational. Now, with all that starting to happen, after 3 to 6 months, you can start to sit comfortably and you're starting to enjoy it and you start to look forward to it. And that's when we can start meditating. Now, everything looks like meditation, but you're really sitting in box breathing. But now we turn that box pattern into a concentration practice. That's part 2. And so the way I teach that is to visualize the box being drawn, with each side being drawn in and the different color, lighting it up, and also adding that mantra, or one or the other, but they both work and they work together. So now you're giving your mind one thing to focus on. And this then develops that power to concentrate deeper, but also gives you the ability to notice when you've lost your focus, or you split your focus, you're wandering, and then you develop the ability to bring it back quicker and quicker to the box pattern. That's called attention control. So you're training yourself concentration, the ability to control your attention, and the ability to be less distracted. Wow. Now that's mind training. And that's the part where I say you're training your mind first with the box breathing, then with the second part of concentration and attention control, to be like a tame, beautiful stallion that was a wild stallion. You know, wild stallion is gorgeous, but it's dangerous. And most people's minds are like that. They're beautiful, but they're dangerous.
Yep.
Dangerous to themselves and to others. But once you train it by lassoing that mind and stabilizing it and calming it down, de-stressing it, and then able to focus it, then it's much happier and it's much calmer, and it's going to serve you instead of trampling you.
Achieve more and do more.
Right. And so that's step 2 in the process. And this might be like, again, everyone's going to be different, but 6 months to 1.5 years. Then step 3, and some of this stuff naturally unfolds, but like it's really powerful. You recognize and you're deliberate about. You don't want to rush meditation. Like, this is a lifetime practice. Be comfortable, get it right in the beginning, because it'll serve you for the rest of your life. So many people bounce around with meditation. They're on it, they're off it, they quit, they're just using a audio app, you know, and they're not really training their brains. It does have some health benefits, but it's not really training their minds. Yep. And furthermore, if you don't end up doing the emotional work, you know, you could really do what they call spiritual bypass, or an emotional bypass, where you could have some nice experiences. You go for the bliss and the white light and all that, but you're not doing anything to change your character, your underlying structures of beliefs and thoughts and biases, right? And so, like, I had a meditation teacher told me, Mark, you know, he wasn't talking to me, he was talking about meditation. He said, if you're an asshole and you start meditating and you meditate for 20 years and you don't do anything about that,
you're still going to be an asshole.
You're just going to be a more focused asshole.
Who did more assholeness? Oh no.
Right. So you want to get this right. Meditation can be transformative at all levels, but you got to do it right. It's just like, you know, learning right foot placement and proper alignment and structure to run 2,000 kilometers. If you don't, you'll break, you know. Same thing with meditation. If you go straight into like Kundalini yoga and you think, oh, that's it, that's my path, and you have a Kundalini awakening and you haven't done the foundational work to integrate that or to deal with that in your body, then you could go crazy. And there are people around this world who are absolutely batshit crazy because they had Kundalini awakenings and they weren't ready to handle it.
Wow. Okay, so you need to do this. You know,
you need to do this work. Right. This is why why the yogis would train for years and years and years in the asanas, the physical postures, so that when they were ready for that experience of enlightenment, which some had and some didn't, and they had that massive like lightning bolt of electricity just explode up their spine and integrate all their chakras and just drawing in all this life force, that they were able to handle it. This intense experience. Now that's a little bit advanced training, probably. We don't need to go into much more of that here.
Yeah, we probably.
But my point is that take your time. Don't be so goal oriented with meditation. It's okay to be goal oriented with your athleticism and with your business stuff. But when it comes to raising your kids and to meditation, it's better to be patient and to be present and just allow the process to unfold, because it's going to be a little bit different for everybody depending upon where you are at psychosocially and physically and emotionally. One thing I do want to, so one thing I just want to finish up this path. So you have the first part, which is the de-stressing the arousal control, where you're just breathing for that. And then the second part where you're breathing for concentration and power and attention control. The third part, which you alluded to, that opens up naturally, is you start to take a little bit of the pressure off of the concentration training, and you allow any thought streams to arise, right? Where concentration training, you're not trying to empty your mind of all thoughts, because you're thinking of one thing, and that is the concentration, the object of concentration. And so you're putting a lot of effort into that, mental effort, which develops mental power. But eventually you've got enough of that. And so you take off the gas a little bit, and you allow less energy to be put into the concentration, and to allow other things to arise. And this is where you get that metacognitive split, which is a good thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So now it's almost like your brain has been partitioned into two hard drives. And one hard drive is your right brain, right hemisphere, which is fully online and aware now because of the concentration. It's not all subconscious, it's aware. It's able to see context. And the second partition is the left hemisphere of your brain, which is the content, thinking. And so you're box breathing softly, just mindfully, just being aware, and you're seeing what's coming up, but you're seeing it from a perspective that's separated from the thoughts and emotions. This is a sea change in behavior. It's awakening to this understanding that you are not your thoughts and emotions, and therefore you're not the stories, and you can change your stories. You can change your life by inserting new stories.
So you're observing yourself from the outside as an extra character that's watching the emotions and the things that you're telling yourself, and understanding that your actual brain, that's been partly programmed in childhood and our culture and everything that it's exposed to, which is running this pattern that's been running forever. And you're actually watching and seeing, oh, that's interesting. You do that.
The observer. You become the observer. I call that the witness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then there's two more things we do in meditation. So once we begin to open up to the witness, the most powerful way to visualize is from the witness perspective, because you're doing it from your higher self. You're visualizing your future from that perspective. It's a lot of people who start training, they start with visualization, and they're like, I can't get a clear picture of my future. And they're really hooked to their thinking mind, and they're thinking about doing in the future. When you can decouple from the thinking mind and look into the future from the perspective of your witness, you're basically seeing what your spirit wants you to see. And so that's going to be much more in alignment, if not in total alignment, with what your real purpose is on this planet. And you're not seeing yourself doing, you're seeing yourself as a type of person, like an archetypal calling. You're seeing yourself as a healer, as a teacher, as a warrior, as a leader, as a, and then that's going to have a certain flavor to it. Like a healer might be a healer of the earth, or it might be a healer of children, or it might be healer of elderly, right? So it's going to have a flavor to it that's going to come to you spontaneously. That's where intuition, comes from. It's like this deep knowingness inside, or transrational from outside of us, which really isn't nothing outside of us. Ultimately,
No.
We create our own reality, and it's all basic, it's all experienced with mind. So that's powerful. So witnessing can lead to the most incredible thing, which is like embodied visualization, where you're visualizing from the perspective of the witness, and you are seeing your future clearly, and you practice that every day. And then that creates this massive magnetic pull, because you're actually creating a memory of a future that is bound to happen, right? We have these different kind of future strands, which are possibilities, but we get to choose which one now that's going to go from possibility to probability to destiny.
Wow.
That's profound. And then the last thing that happens is when you stop doing anything at all, and this happened to me on the Zen bench when I was in my 20s, and now it's routine, where you can start breathing for arousal control, and then you breathe for concentration, then you open up to the mindful awareness, and you see what's going on, and you check in and make sure that everything's cool. And then you do your visualization, and then you just stop efforting at all. You just stop trying to do anything, and you just sit and rest and let your mind kind of rest. You're not going to sleep, but what you're doing is kind of turning inward and just letting awareness kind of search for itself. So awareness, your awareness is searching for, let's just say, absolute awareness. It's trying to recognize itself in the totality of everything. And it will find itself because it is the same as that. And this is when you get this like incredibly deeply connected feeling to all that is, right? This is where the ultimate road to the end of separation is this sense of this unity experience.
That we're connected and
we're super utterly connected. We all arise out of the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. Our higher selves are all rise out of the same thing. We have our unique aspects of it, but the metaphors that I love to use is, we recognize that we're all like waves in the ocean, but we all have the same wetness and we're connected to the ocean.
We're part of the ocean. We're like
part of the ocean,
a vessel in the ocean, but
right. And this is another transformative experience in meditators' progression and evolution, is that they then never do you go back to feeling separate again. You may have moments, but you remember that, oh yeah, this is just a temporary experience of separation. Yeah. So let me go back and continue my training. And then the training starts to become integrated into your daily life. And then every moment becomes training. And then that turns into a permanent state of unity experience. And that would be called enlightenment.
Wow. And this is like the whole, so this whole body thing. So it's not just training your body, because everyone wants to know what diet do I have and what exercise should I be doing. But if we're forgetting this big piece of the puzzle, that we're not just physical beings, and that we can access our neurology through our physiology, and we can access also higher things when we take the time. And it was a hard sell for me. Like I said, I struggle because I just want to be doing. I'm an action oriented person. I want to be doing things, and to actually take that time, and it's not a waste of time. And when people say to me, "But I haven't got time to meditate," well, that you need to make time to do all this stuff, and you don't start off 8 hours a day up in the mountains of Tibet doing it. You got to progress.
Eventually, you might want to do that. That's what I want to do.
Great, wouldn't it? There was one other thing that you discussed too with Bedros that really interested me, which was recapitulation. Can you explain what recapitulation is and how that sort of works?
I will. And I before I do, I would like to just say that as an athlete, I imagine most people listening are athletes. We have a great opportunity and also great responsibility, because most of the people, at least in the past, who have been drawn to meditation don't have the physical strength or capacity that we have. And so you end up seeing, might be one thing that has turned off a lot of people, healthy people, fit people, is they're like, well, that Buddhist monk is fat, right?
He doesn't look like I want to look like.
Right. I don't want to look like that, or I don't want to wear a robe and check out of society and sit in a monastery.
Words and
so those, you got to recognize that, like Zen monasteries, I've been to Zen monastery before, and it's just not my thing. And people who are drawn to spiritual traditions but ignore their body and ignore their emotions, they're incomplete. They might have some advanced mental training, but they're incomplete. Their physical structure, and a lot of these people fall, right? They fail in the long run because they still get stuck in their ego, or they get really unhealthy and they fall apart. So athletes can approach this from the perspective of total health, right? Body, mind, spirit, or we say physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. And it's going to be a more complete process or package. And furthermore, you're going to be able to help others because you're going to be really healthy, really strong, really motivated, and you're going to have a lot of endurance. And you're going to be whole. So I think it's athletes and warriors who also become enlightened or awakened, who are serving the world, who can change the world. Together, right? Because we got the strength and the staying power, and also because we have to face our fears and our shadows, because we do hard things. We tend to actually be more emotionally balanced than people who don't. So I wanted to say that. So really, that should be a motivating force for athletes.
I mean, that's, it's what I've come full circle to, is this holistic approach rather than the head through the wall approach, which, in the gym or in the training field, you have to go sometimes to, through to places that are not pleasant, but you don't need to neglect this other part of you, and that's you're a whole, and it's not contradictory, because a lot of people think, Mark Divine, what's he about, man? Is he this hard ass athlete, or is he this amazing spiritual teacher? And he's both, and that's not.
I did my 3 hours of training this morning.
I haven't.
Today was deadlifts and a nice functional WOD and my yoga and meditation, and it's all together, right? It's all one thing. Back to your question. So imagery and visualization is such an incredible, powerful tool for us to create our destiny, which I've already talked about, but also to heal our past. So recapitulation is where we use imagery, ideally also from the state of the witness, right? When we get there, to go back into our past and to re-experience and relive traumatic events. And then to recontextualize them and to forgive, both from from your heart and from your dialogue, conceptual self, but also with the imagery, to see yourself forgiving your younger version of yourself. And then also to change that picture, to change the image that you associate with it and the energy associated with it. This is often best done with a qualified coach or like therapist, and in the process of like EMDR, eye motion disassociation training.
Yep.
Is really valuable. And that's something I do all the time. I have an EMDR coach, and I continue to do this because there's no there, right? You can peel the onion forever and then even go back into past lives, right? Work on the past life shit, right? There's no end to this stuff, right? Once you get into it, you realize that it's a lifetime of work. And the more you do, the lighter you feel and the more energy you have and the more joy and bliss you bring into my life. I call it akin to like dragging kettlebells of regret and resentment and resistance around.
I love that quote, because you're draining all that, like what I've felt in the last years, like I'm pulling this heavy load of shit that's accumulated from all the traumas and all the shit that you've been through. And so I've been working with Dr. Don Wood, who I know has been on your show, working through some of the traumas and taking the color out of those memories and recapitulating.
So what Don is doing is recapitulation. It's a form of it.
Yeah, it's the same.
It's the same thing. You change the association, the energy, the emotions, and the imagery with past traumatic events. First, you have to identify those events. Right. So awareness is the first step. I learned of recapitulation. I've done like thousands of hours of training in different systems, not just Navy SEALs, but obviously yoga and Tibetan Buddhism and martial arts, Tai Chi, Qigong, now Aikido, and my earlier stuff. And then even Apache Scout training and some Toltec training. In the Toltec training, the ancient warriors required the young men, I don't think the women, in ancient times in the Toltecs were warriors, but the men, by the way, I only say that because of all the cultural weirdness is going on in America anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be careful what you say now.
I don't want to get canceled. Anyway,
Google might take us off here.
Right, exactly. So they required their young men, before they were allowed to become warriors, to spend a year in nature. Now that's, people have heard of that, right? You could take your year, walk about, and assuming you survive. But what they had to do during that year was what was unique. And they had to recapitulate their entire lives, day by day, all the way back to birth.
Wow, that's heavy.
It's heavy. And so this did a couple things for them. One is it really developed their visualization skills.
Yeah.
Which then they were going to use for great benefit for their future, but they had to learn, first to work with their past, and secondarily, it let them see and recontextualize and heal, any regrets or any wounds or any trauma that they had or any mistakes that they made, so that when they were admitted to the warrior clan and they actually had to face battle, they didn't have any of that energy holding them back.
That's
if you think about, like, anyone listening, or even you, like, if you walk outside right now and someone's standing there with a sword, the first thing that's going to leap into your mind or in your heart is like, holy shit, I don't know if I can do this. Or, there's energy there that is going to prevent you from acting in a powerful way. Well, recapitulation and clearing all that energy will clear all that up, and you would just literally spring into action.
Wow. So you wouldn't have that.
You have that. You even overcome fear of death.
Yeah. Wow. You haven't got that heavy backpack of shit.
Right. exactly.
Yeah, and
I love
regret.
that metaphor. We use that in our Kokoro camp, which is 50-hour training that we have for SEALFIT, which in one sense simulates Hell Week, but in another, it's really designed to train these 5 mountains of the physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. And so we have, the students end up, this very long, painful hike, and they've got these 40-pound sandbags in their back, and they're doing all sorts of drills and skills. And at the end of this, we have them take the sandbag out and think about their biggest regrets and the big one. Like everyone's got like one big one.
Yeah.
The monster regret, and then we have them cut the sandbag open and then they dump that regret out. And it's so powerful because people are literally in tears if they let that shit go.
Wow. That's amazing, because you've literally carried it up this bloody mountain.
Carried it up the mountain.
Fit and you've exhausted yourself.
Right.
And now you're letting that stuff go.
That's cool. Huh?
It's absolutely brilliant. And I think, we need to be doing this as a daily practice at the end of the day, going back over your day, so that you're not taking the shit from this day forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. So that the morning routine is to prepare to win your mind for the day, and the evening routine is to look back and make sure that you won the day and you learn from your mistakes and you let go of all regrets. So recapitulation is used in 2 ways. One is to go back and overcome the big things, the big traumas, like you're doing with Don.
Yep.
And the other is to go back and to literally just make sure that every day that you're not dragging any new kettlebells of regret into your sleep cycle, right? You deal with it right away. Like if you did something that you think was, man, I wish I hadn't done that. Well, either forgive yourself right away or go make amends right there. If you can, pick up the phone, send a text, right?
Apologize
do it
for being
now.
a dick. Yeah.
Or plan the critical conversation for the next morning, right? To get it off your chest. The faster you do, the better off you do. And then this becomes a practice of letting go. And having a daily practice of letting go of regrets and resentments is extraordinarily valuable, right? Because then it frees up all the energy before it takes root and starts to create a cancer, of energy in your body, or real cancer, frankly.
Or literally, And this is and then we've got much more power to actually do the stuff that we're meant to be here doing, to help the people, to create the programs, the books, the podcasts, whatever it is that you are on your mission for. You can't, when you're carrying this huge, great load on your back. I know that my ability when I was in my 30s and I didn't have quite so much crap in there, I was unbeatable. I was like, and then as, life keeps slapping you around the face and you're getting some big traumas happen, you start to lose that energy and you start to and people go, well, you're just getting older, the mitochondria and all that. I was like,
I know, this is where people start to give up, right?
Yeah.
And it's the time to get busy on what's important.
And the older you are, the more you have to work. That's my mantra. Because I brought my mum back from a massive aneurysm, which I've written a book about called Relentless. And this story is really, really powerful. But it's about, like, she's 79 years old and I train her like an Olympic athlete,
Awesome.
I make little concessions every now and again when she tells me off, like the other day, she's willing to go through the hard yards to rehabilitate her brain, because her brain was like, in a vegetative state when she first had this, like not much happening upstairs at all. And so I've spent 5 years rehabilitating her and spending hundreds and thousands of hours retraining her from the time of being a baby, through to being an adult, and the neuroplasticity and all the things that I had to learn, and hyperbaric and all the stuff that I did with her. But she hasn't given up. She hasn't ever said to me, I don't want any more, because she's a fighter, even though she's a quiet, lovely lady. And you'd think, well, she's just a nice, gentle lady. She's tough as nails when it comes to just getting up and doing the work today. At the age of 79, and that is a huge role model for other elderly people. Because we tend to, and I really honor our elderly, and part of my culture, I'm from Māori culture, and we do that quite well. And in normal culture, we seem to think that older people are no longer worthwhile, and they should, they cost the society, and they're a burden, and they're not. So this is where our wisdom and their experience, if we can help them be healthy and strong. And
Mhm.
you know, my opinion is that they have to have goals and they have to be working. And
Mhm.
you know, people always told me, "Oh, you should make it comfortable," and hasten her exit of this world. And I'm like, hell no, you know. And you know, occasionally, like the other day, I was pushing down on her back as she's doing squats, you know, to give her some weight resistance because I can't put a barbell on her back yet. And for once, she comes up and she goes, "I want to punch you in the face." And I'm like, it's the first time in 5 years.
There's the fighter.
Yeah, like she usually just does whatever I ask her to do, but she was like, she'd had enough of me that day. But she fights every day, you know, and those sort of stories are powerful. But you know, you have to. She just gets up and does the work every day, so it's never too late. And we should be honoring our elderly people. We should be giving them goals. I don't care whether you're 5 or 105. You need to be aiming towards something. When you let go and you be comfortable and you just get into your comfy world, and this is, you know, I'm going to sit back on the couch and watch Netflix and eat chips. Well, then you're on the way down.
You're toast. Yeah, that's why the idea of retirement is such a killer. Like it's just a horrible deceit. Right?
Yes.
So get rid of that thought. Don't ever retire. Just change what you do and find something else you love to do, and keep on setting goals and achieving and growing.
Yeah.
Keep growing.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Mark, you've been absolutely amazing. I want to be respectful of your time because I could talk to you for hours. Literally, honestly, I would love to just unpack all this stuff. But you've been absolutely amazing. Now, you have a number of books. You have courses online, and then you have live training camps that people can go to, which think twice about. I think they'd be pretty tough ones. But where can people find you, your books, and all of that?
I love your sell there. I think twice about going to his training. But it's probably a good advice. So, well, my personal website is markdevine.com, which is kind of like a catch-all. My podcast can be found there. You can find my podcast at iTunes and all of that. And then follow me on Instagram at Real Mark Devine. My books, you know, if you're interested in this training, you know, here's my last, like this one. Unbeatable Mind is kind of where it all started. And I'm actually working on the 4th edition. My pandemic edition will be out in September. Staring Down the Wolf came out last year, right before the pandemic. This is about emotionally powerful leadership. And then The Way of the SEAL is really like how to think and lead like an elite warrior, like how to get shit done. And there's some really good stuff in all these books. And there's a little overlap, but they're all very, very different.
And that actually, just before we do wrap up, that leadership piece of the puzzle, I have to ask this because my husband's a firefighter and he's leading teams and so on. How do you get, if I can just ask for a couple of quick tips on the leadership stuff, because that's probably another bloody hour, but how can you be a good leader? How can you get people who are disengaged back into, you know, into the game, into the team, being a part of a team?
Yeah, well, you know, that's a really good question.
Sorry, I only thought of it now.
The first thing to do as a leader is to show up as the best version of yourself, humble, authentic, you know, trustworthy, courageous, and respectful. And so to develop those qualities takes some time, and you got to work on that, and you got to work on that with the team and in front of the team, and not hide it from the team, and not pretend to be perfect, not pretend you have all the answers. So most leaders are in their own way in terms of being able to unlock the power of their team, because the team doesn't trust them because they don't know they're wearing a mask. So take the masks off, develop your whole self as a leader. Then what we like to do in our company Unbeatable is we like to develop leaders. We like to create teams within the companies that we work with for the sole purpose of development, which is really cool. We call them boat crews. So imagine you're in a company or a fire department and you're in a boat crew with guys that are working on becoming better versions of themselves. They're working on things like we've been talking about. And that ends up developing incredible trust and motivation, because now everyone's, you know, they're taking the mask off together and they're holding each other accountable to be better people. And then they go out and fight a fire together, right? Yeah. And so it's, you know, that's, you know, simple things is like box breathing with your team is very intimate, and it creates this incredible resonance and trust in people. you start to recognize, like we were saying earlier, that we're not separate. One of the best ways to be motivated, to help someone who's unmotivated get motivated, is help them end separation in themselves and to feel connected.
Yep. And how did they get them to take that mask off? And like, because you said once somewhere that leaders are also followers, and that when you're like, the team is the new way of the future.
Team's the new leader.
The leader, the follower.
The way we do it is to put everyone together into a crucible experience, into some experience where they literally cannot solve the challenges alone. This is why we do these events that we have. They're not all hard. The SEAL events, the SEALFIT events, are ridiculously hard, and they're for people like you and spec ops candidates for SAS or SEALs or Green Berets, whatever. But with Unbeatable Mind, my company Unbeatable Mind, which is the sign behind me, we do this with corporate clients, and we have 50-year-old women who are out of shape, and they're like, but we don't beat them up like Navy SEAL training. We just get everyone uncomfortable together. This is what we'll be doing, like yoga and breath work and ice baths and integrated training. We teach them a lot of the skills of all the skills of Unbeatable Mind, but we have them do it together as a team. We have them hold each other accountable. We have them really open up and develop more of that vulnerability. And that's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. And so, like, we did an event last week where two of the individuals hadn't even spoken to each other in over a year. By the end of the event, they were hugging.
Wow.
And like being like, wow, I'm sorry, that I treated you like that, and I projected all that on you and whatnot. So it really helps. Like, we start all of our training events with corporate teams or organizational teams or even athletic teams with a 3-day or 2.5 to 3 day event like this, which is very, very dynamic, very integrated. It's not all fit, and it's only a little bit of a physical training, but it's definitely there, right?
Yeah.
And so they're learning all these skills, all 5 mountains. They're doing physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual development as a team. And then after that, we work with them for a minimum of 4 to 6 months in a boat crew, right, in a small team setting with a certified coach. And the combination of those two is just transformative, because then they're practicing all these skills we talked about, both individually but also as a team, and they're being held accountable, and they're doing challenges together, right? And they're having really authentic communications together, and they're working on emotional things. They're working on their, mental strength and physical strength and setting goals. It's really, really powerful.
And that must completely change corporations when you do that to that intensity, because
it can be,
because we all go to work, a lot of people go to work and they have this professional persona that they put on, and they're all doing their interactions with this, and then they go home and go, fuck,
They take the mask off and pick up the beer or the wine, right?
Because of the frustration and the, oh my God, I'm not coping. And if we can, like, I often get, I know we have to wrap it up, but if we can, like, just be real with each other. We're human beings, like, we not have to go around like the Queen of England and observe all these protocols and stuff and be professional. Like, can't we just be us?
People are craving leaders who are real.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. And that's what we need to work on. The just doing the work that we talked about today brings it, right? It brings that reality back, because you're discovering the truth of your own nature.
Yep.
And then as a leader, you just want to bring that to your team first, as how you show up, and then by starting to introduce these ideas, and then by starting to train together. And eventually, I think, where the world will change is when we all start changing ourselves, but then each organization becomes a change agent internally, meaning you're changing the people. You're not trying to like have a bunch of jerks trying to change the world through donating to some social cause or demanding some social cause on social media. You're all changing. The organization is changing because you've got the practices. You're practicing breathing and mindfulness and authentic communications and compassion within the workforce. And then that shows up in how you interact with your customers and how you interact with the environment, and et cetera. It ripples out.
And it just covers that whole area, and this team of the, leaders, followers, and having that change around, just because you're the one that's got the officer or whatever on your shoulders, and it doesn't mean that you are always in the lead role. Sometimes you can be in the follower if you've got that, and having been comfortable with that.
That's right.
I think that is a good place to wrap it up, Mark. You've been absolutely wonderful today. Thank you so much. So unbeatablemind.com. the 3 books, The Way of the SEAL, Unbeatable Mind, and help me with the third one again.
Staring Down the Wolf. I
Staring
will
Down the
say
Wolf.
that we have this amazing entry course that we created this year.
Yeah.
It's a 30-day kind of challenge course where it's like 15 minutes of training day. I have a video training, and then there's a little journaling, and it can be found at unbeatablemind.com/challenge.
Wow. And we can do this online.
You can do it all online,
Oh,
and I'll get
brilliant.
emailed to you, and people love it. And it's a great way to learn box breathing and visualization and micro goals and a lot of things we talked about. And it's super cheap. Like it's ridiculously cheap.
That sounds like a good
$99 or something like that.
Yeah,
So go
yeah,
check
yeah.
it out.
That sounds like a really good place for people who, you know, stuck in New Zealand, can't fly to America to go to
That's right. Yeah,
camp
no,
or something.
right.
Which I'd love to. Mark Devine, you've been
Someday.
amazing. You're just incredible, man. And I thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Lisa.